the first factor in how long we will live for is socioeconomic. That's something we can't fix. We need someone smarter than us to fix that one. But the second one is how many friends you have.
We see the game club as the antithesis of, AI and these chatbots and things like this. If the problem is loneliness, the answer is helping people connect with other people.
Because, when we talk about 4.2 civic organizations is the amount that you're in Australia as a middle-aged man I would be in if it was 50 years ago, and currently statistically it is 0, which means that we've radically changed how people interact with their community.
Guy Blomberg and Shay P. Leighton have started a book club, except it's not really about books, it's about games. Except it's not really about games, it's about friends. In a time of rising loneliness, these two excel at bringing people together. Blomberg is behind organizing such conventions as PAX and DreamHack, as well as GIG, the games industry gathering. And Leighton is a community organizer who speaks to unions, activists, and politicians. Using the standard book club model, the game club sends a game plus discussion prompts to its users every month, and they meet up and talk about it. So far, so normal. But there's extensive research behind this around loneliness and community building. And I had a few discussion prompts of my own for these two about how we take the hobby of ELO matchmaking and auto invites for guilds and ditch the mantra of playing alone together to just be together. Let's start with a broad one. Why don't we play games together anymore?
I actually think it's not so much about why don't we play games together anymore. It's more about why don't we talk about the games that we play with each other as much anymore. I think it's like, you can jump online and people play with friends and things like this, but that's less talking to each other or with each other or having like a dialogue with each other. I miss those kind of water cooler moments where people would come together and actually talk about the gaming experiences they have. And I think social media is a bit of a failed experiment trying to bring conversations together. And it feels like we've come about circle where everyone's searching for that space and that opportunity to have those conversations about the games they're playing, not just multiplayer games, but even single player games, being excited about this game I'm playing and being able to talk to your friends or even just strangers about it. It's harder to find those spaces at the moment.
And that's the interesting thing, right? Is that we've got a group of people who already have shared experiences. Playing a game is a collection of experiences, and people are experiential. Like groups of people are experiential, not categorical. So everyone who experiences the same thing, as long as they're together, can be one group. So play something separate, but we already have a shared story. You and I can talk about a game that we played 15 years ago, and we can bond over that shared joy that we have of that game, or sometimes even shared hatred of the game. That works as well. But it's that we have shared experience, and it's one of the building blocks of community. And how we do that, I don't think is being done well. I know everyone's experienced this where you've played a couple of 100 hours of a co-op game with someone, and at the end of it, the game dies and you're not really friends.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want it to be. How do you make that transition? Or you're in a fan group of something of a game, and you're in there for a long time. You know the same things as these people, but how do you transition that into actual relationship, like being in relation with them? So there's obviously this gap here somewhere.
Yeah, and one of the big questions I had around that was, I mentioned the Robin Dunbar book, and he's obviously famous for Dunbar's number, where he talks about the sort of cognitive limit that we have for friendship. And, the famous number that people quote is 250, where we can only cognitively support 250 friends at one time. In the book, he goes into more detail, and he talks about these concentric circles of there are larger numbers for acquaintances, and there's a larger number for the amount of faces that we can recognize. And there are smaller circles for, close friends and family. But there are these concentric circles which routinely prove themselves in data sets that you look at, from phone records to surveys, where, if one friend might leave and we might gain another one, but our cognitive limit kind of stays the same. And I worry that, with the type of friendships that you just talked about, like how much of our cognitive limit is being taken up by that, and also, modern like asymmetrical friendship culture where it's like, social media influencers and streamers, like how much of our cognitive limit is taken up by that?
There's two awesome questions in there. And the first one is about how social media, are you talking with your friends or are you talking at them?
Yeah.
Right now, most people will have one chat with their real friends that is the center of their social life. And then everything else is posting photos at each other at 20 paces,
Yeah.
like it's a jewel. So
Yeah.
how can we make a third version? What does a third thing look like? And the other one is the asymmetric stuff entirely. Even trying to explain this idea to people when we were talking to people within gaming and within influencer stuff, they were like, yeah, like a book club for games, it'll be great. You'll play the game and then you'll talk at them and then they'll like post in the chat.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that. We're going to see if we can do something. Sometimes if you're going through a thing, so we're going through what people have been referring to as the friendship recession is kind of the cooler term for it at the moment. At the end of the 20th century, we've kind of been dropping in numbers of close friends. Sometimes when you're going through something, you can look back for solutions. And the idea of getting groups of people back together at a table to discuss a thing, to work on a thing together, to break it down, could be a way out.
I think that's been one of the other interesting things about the game club is at the very base of it, and what Shay and I, we keep coming back to it and making sure we remind ourselves as well, is that the purpose of it and the drive and what we're trying to achieve is to help people make friends, build friendships. Now, it's built around a whole game club, get a free game every month and then play it and, join the community and talk to, and that's all good. But really what we're trying to achieve here is to help people make friends. Although you talk about those different circles, we are very much focused on that inner circle and finding a number of people to actually bring together in a small group with a shared interest, where the questions are curated to try and prompt them to actually open up and talk about themselves in an environment where other people are genuinely listening. Repeat that every month, and people are going to start to build friendships out of it.
And that's something that other book clubs, like, when I think about like Oprah's book club, like they give you prompts as well, right? Like reflective prompts.
That's where you don't learn in the doing, you don't learn in the reflecting on the doing. So reflecting and debriefing these shared experiences that we do together is where you're going to learn things about each other, right? Because all books or games go through you, and then when you talk about them, they're coming out of you. So you're talking about yourself. So each of you is sharing something, a little bit about yourself whenever you talk about a game. Why you don't like a game or why you do like a game is about you. And so people get to learn about you through just the discussions of the things that we already love.
I worry about it a little bit because sometimes we may have gone too far down referring to this as like a book club for games. Because I think a lot of other book clubs that are out there are more focused around the book itself and then leaving people to their own devices to actually be like, here's the book, read it and go organize and catch up with folks. Whereas what we're doing with the game club is really curating that experience of people catching up. And the questions that are asked, sure, some of them are, very much about the game. Do you think the pixel-based graphics of this game hold up today? Or what do you this has tabletop mechanics in it. What was the first board game you played? But then some questions will be, could be a bit deeper. Like this game deals with regret. What's something in your life you regret? Like getting people to personally open up through this shared experience. I think that's really core to the success that we're going to find with the game club as well, is not just leaving people to their own devices, but actually helping them create, curate, run, and come together in these spaces.
And where they are, meeting people where they are in their own neighborhood. So not this asymmetric, we're not going to do it at them, we're going to do it with them. And then we're going to ask them to do it with each other. So build community where they are, talk to each other about the things they care about.
So yeah, I've noticed the intentional language around neighborhood and stuff on the website, and there does seem to be a strong nudge towards real life meetups. What do you think is lost when we? Because I imagine some people will be thinking about doing digital game clubs. but how important is it to have the physical meetup, the face-to-face interaction? What's lost when we don't do that?
To be honest with you, when we first started this, we were going to have it all just in person. Like, we really wanted to push for the in person. I do believe that you get the most value out of those in person connections. What we didn't want to miss, though, was people that are in more remote communities or rural environments, or in spaces where they're not in a major CBD or city, where they can't as easily have a catch up, or even in some of these towns where it would be an hour for them to drive to get to whatever that club is. So we want to make sure there's options. I think we do push people towards the physical meetups, but we wanted to have digital as an option, even an option where people could start there and then lead into a physical connection.
It's easier to make friends in person. Let's get people together back at a table. Make those locations that we're in a space of remarkable loneliness. Easiest way to fix that is sit down with some people and talk.
What we want out of this is actually people to actually make friends, and then they catch up with those people outside of these games. But like, we're trying to build friendships, not just within the confines of the game club. And that tends to be more successful when you live 15 minutes apart from each other.
It's easy to be friends with someone when you see them at the dog park on the weekend. After you might be at a game club, right?
Well, yeah, one of the things that, Robin Dunbar talked about in his book was, the health benefits of friendship. And because, there have been studies talking about how loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese. He talks a lot about sort of social networks and graphs of friends in his book. And they found that, like, if you have a happy friend within a mile of you, you were 25% more likely to become happy. If you had a happy next door neighbor, you were 34% more likely to be happy. A lot of this stuff is based around proximity and geography. I don't know that there's the same effect in the digital world.
I haven't come across any. But I know where the smoking thing comes from, which is actually a really interesting study, which is the Harvard longevity study, which is life expectancy, the primary outcome. It's the largest study on longevity of all time. So how long you're going to live for. The first factor in how long you will live for is socioeconomic. That's something we can't fix. We need someone smarter than us to fix that one. But the second one is how many friends you have. Is legitimately the second one. And so if you backtrack that number, that's where they got that 15 cigarettes from, is from that study. And it just says if you've got more friends, and this is where the ratio of friends is important as well. Right now, most people believe they have less friends than they would like. That's the majority of people, both in the two countries that Yug and I live in. They talk about the Fantastic Five, which is if you've got 5, you're at like a healthy, normal position. What they suggest is having 10 close friends, which is what a large family structure would look like, would be most healthy. That would be that's the ideal, where people would be most healthy. And currently, a person my age, my gender, and where I live has about 2.1.
Wow.
And if I'm a little bit younger than me, then I would have 1.8 as an average. So this is what they talk about, the friendship deficit. We're missing it. We're missing something here.
I think there's another aspect here, which is the quality of the friends and the friendships as well. So you're talking about the difference between in-person, meetups and catching up with folks as opposed to digital. I think some of this also is a little bit generational. I was working with a gaming outlet a while ago that was very much targeting your Gen Alpha kind of demographics and whatnot, and they live online in a different way than I'm like a Gen X millennial, like in a different way than I ever have. They're in Fortnite, they're in these online spaces, and that is where they maintain their friendships, even if they've actually started them in the real world or in person or through school or things like this. So I do think there's room and scope for digital relationships and friendships to actually build up. I gotta be honest with you, I'm gonna be curious to see it in the game club. I'm gonna be curious to see how it works. I think a lot of this is there's not a lot of other things like this out there in a meaningful way. But when I moved here to New York, I didn't know anyone here, and I was kind of desperately trying to find things to help me meet people. There's not as many things. There's only so many bars you can sit at and order people drinks where they think that you're hitting on them. Where it's just like I just want to meet friends. And only so many classes you can go to where again you're not really conversing with the other people because everyone's focused on
There's
this.
only so many running clubs and pottery classes, and
But
and what if you don't like pottery or running?
yeah.
But even then, I remember being at somebody. I went to like some still life. Oh my god, classes, and I'm like everyone's focused on painting and charcoal drawing the things that were in front of us, and then at the end of it, it's like you kind of wanted to talk to each other, but there was no prompt and there was no push and there was nothing curated to help people talk to each other. Funny enough, the events where I got the most value, I went to speed dating events, not to go on dates, but just to meet people. And when I was in an environment for 5 minutes, we're kind of forced to talk and listen to the person directly opposite the table with you. I actually made a couple of friendships out of that. They're still friends of mine today here in New York. Wild.
Amazing. Love it.
The interest on that is that the quality of conversations we have in these spaces, you talk about a drawing class, like a still life class, and you are together, spending time together with people focused on something. But if you were actually to make friends, where you would probably do it is in a cafe or a bar straight afterwards, because the debriefing, the breaking down of the experience and the talking apart the parts that we share is where you get to what's really important to these relationships, which is shared values. Getting to a place where we're talking about the things that we share at a fundamental level. And once you get to those spaces, that's how you know you're friends with someone, right?
Yeah,
and
like finding things that you can relate on, or like you can relate on these things with the person about what just happened. Like, the conference just happened. We're having drinks. We're trying to relate in some way. Or if it's like after work drinks or whatever. Yeah.
As people who've been around the gaming industry for a while, the 2 glasses of wine after a conference is literally where most of the relationships get formed, right?
Well, you guys are the main culprits for that.
Whatever do you mean?
Encouraged a little bit of tequila drinking, if I remember right.
We're back in the day. We're older now, right?
We're much older. Cups of tea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's always been an interesting thing for me, though, having been someone that's run a lot of these huge pop culture conventions where it is very much about getting huge crowds of people together where they have these shared interests. And even more so, the PAX show is running like 150 panels. You've got, then it's even more niche and narrowed down. It's like, do you want to go to, there's a panel about the economics of commerce and EVE Online. And you better believe the 100 people in that panel, like that is a really targeted niche. The problem is that when you get people into the same room, you've got to give them more to do than just say, great, now go talk to each other, especially folks that are making friends when it's not a friend of a friend or a friend through work or introduced in some sort of environment it's hard. And I think a lot of us aren't really trained or built to really know how to do that in a meaningful way either.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I feel like it's a skill I had to have since being very young, just because I moved around so much. So it's like when you go to so many different schools, you're just forced to, even if I'm not, I'm naturally introverted and stuff like that. But it's, it's like sink or swim. Like, do you want friends? Well, you're going to have to walk up to people. But even the conference side of things, I mean, I can think of a few societal and technological factors that are that exist within gaming that kind of push us towards this state, the rise of broadband, led to kind of less LAN parties, and the fact that we have matchmaking and leaderboards means we don't use a server browser, and we don't have a home server where we meet people. And obviously there's social media, and even game design itself, everything is so hyper tailored to our specific interests that I've had moments where I want to play an FPS game and my friend wants to play an FPS game, but we don't want to play that one. So we end up just playing a part. And I'm just as much of a culprit on that one because I have the game that's hyper tailored for me. Whereas if you go back to like LAN parties, people were just playing like StarCraft, Counter-Strike, Warcraft 3, and not much else.
You were in one of the lanes. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. And you go back even further and it's like, oh, well, hundreds of years ago, there was only like chess and a deck of cards. So
we got two tables. Like we got two tables at this bar.
And never the twain shall meet. Yes.
It's interesting though, because you talk about the games that we play, and obviously with the game club, there's actually another reason why we're curating and we're targeting games that were kind of overlooked from a couple of years ago. I'm sure you felt that. I've certainly felt this. I don't know, man. 10 years ago, like everyone was talking about whatever game was coming out.
Yeah.
And I think now you've got so many games as a service, like long tail games that people are just in those worlds or those environments, or they're in that particular lane. That is the game they play. Sometimes it's because that's also where their friends are in that game as well. People keep playing Valorant because all their friends play Valorant, so they're not going to try, new things. So it creates less of these monthly water cooler moments. What I miss is going onto social media and seeing everyone excited about the same game that came out that week that everyone's really big into. And what we hope to kind of do with the game club is the games we're choosing, we're trying to pick games that no one, it sounds bad to say it this way. I don't mean to be this way, but I want games that people didn't play. I want games that they should have, but they didn't. And the developer, maybe they just didn't get as much of a marketing kick. Maybe it just didn't hit at the right time, or, so many games are released on Steam. It's really easy to overlook them and whatnot. And it would be great if we had all the members of the game club that were talking about it online. And this game from like 5 years ago, this little small overlooked, underappreciated gem of a game kind of gets a water cooler moment every month. I think that would be glorious. So, yeah.
There are some technical limitations to what you can choose, right? Because I mean, one of the biggest concerns, we in the last episode we had Tracy Fullerton on to talk about a book she wrote called The Well-Read Game, and I was reading through this book and I was like, this is perfect for what you guys are doing, because she talks about the importance of sharing experiences and getting together with people and having a reading of a game. The player arrives to a game and there's this third thing between the player and the game called a reading, which is at that moment in time. And then, 6 months later, if you were to play the game, the reading would be different because you're bringing a different self to it.
And then you're different. That's exactly it. That's the game goes in you.
It's like the quote about the man doesn't step into the river twice. Because it's a different man. I mean, one of the things that she said was super important because they talk about the idea of a game club in the Well-Read Game a lot. Because when they're pulling from reader response theory, which goes back even all the way back to there was Louise Rosenblatt and John Dewey in the 1970s and 1930s talking about, so they've built up this theory of how to do this within the literature world. And they all say it's extremely important to journal what you're feeling about it and to share it with others and compare the difference between perspectives. But there are certain limitations to how to do it in a game club. And Tracy was saying one of the main ones would be time. Games take a lot more time to play. So you kind of might be naturally limited towards shorter experiences, in relatively to, because some games are 100 hours.
We're trying to target games that are between 8 to 10 hours to complete, or around about that. We don't want to do a 40-hour RPG. That's a little bit much on folks. How about, I also will say that there's no real imperative, or we're not going to force people or make them feel like they didn't complete the assignment if they didn't complete the game. It's something that it's a real balancing act for us to be excited about the game that everyone's playing that month, while at the same time recognizing that the focus is the people coming together. So even if you only played the first hour of that game and you didn't really like it, that's fine. Come to, the Clubhouse meetup at the end of the month, and you're still going to have something to talk about and share about that experience, because a lot of the questions are going to prompt people to talk about themselves and their experience. The game is the catalyst for those conversations.
Also other games as well, right? Like when you talk about the things that we enjoy in the games that we play and being a human in this space and time, like everything is within those questions, and you're able to have discussions with the people you know. Also, I just also want to shout out that we've mentioned John Dewey twice in this conversation.
Oh, yeah?
In like 30 minutes, which is excellent.
I
garbled the quote of John Dewey earlier, and then you referenced them then. So
I can see Shay's eyes light up every time you reference an academic, Jeremy, and I can see him being like, "Oh, this is great." One other note on the games is, you know what, we're gonna kind of figure it out as we go along. We don't have a roadmap of something else or someone else that's done anything similar to this in this space. I think it's exciting being in this position where we're kind of, figuring it out as we go. The genres of games that we're picking, like we're even concerned, like, if we have an RTS one month and then a platformer the next month, and, how much do we worry about an FPS game if people aren't as comfortable with that? And how much does it, we don't need every game to be like over like a deep, serious narrative, but we need them to have some narrative to them so we can, branch questions out of them and things like this. So it's going to be interesting.
And, it's all like good problems to have, but there are decisions to make between like choosing the more formal side of games or like the more ludology side of games, which is more about the mechanics and dynamics and systems. And that's like sort of what I've kind of focused on throughout my career as a critic. And I've sort of prided myself on that. But then, there's this whole other side, which I felt like I was being opened up to while I read Tracy Fullerton's book, where it's more about deliberate, what they call in the book as ellipses, of like deliberate gaps for you to bring yourself to, and you can bring your own fiction to it or your own headcanon, and you can bring your own interpretation to it. And I've always, typically when people talk about games like that, they're talking about like, Dear Esther and Gone Home and What Remains of Edith Finch and Unpacking. And those are a lot of the games that came up in the conversation with Tracy. But what I realized was that there are also kind of games that ninja this in a little bit. Like, I feel like if you can get past the barrier of the mechanics of Dark Souls, the story of Dark Souls is very much that ellipses. And you get these other games like Eco and Last Guardian and Shadow of the Colossus, where they're action games. But, I mean, try to find someone who didn't feel for the horse.
Each of those games that you've mentioned there, interestingly, are games that have got a lot of time of silence, and you're alone for a lot of time. So like not just the thought of space, like the theory of space, what you can place yourself in, but the time that you spend alone in a space. There's not a Fallout fan in the world who doesn't like being a little bit lonely out in the wasteland just for a little bit.
That's so interesting. Yeah, there's one of the things Tracy talked about was there are games like, I think one of the examples she gave was Life is Strange, and I think Heavy Rain might have been another one, where like Life is Strange has a moment where you're just sitting on a train with your friend and you can press anything to escape it and it'll just move on to the next scene. But a lot of players don't, because they're sitting with what just happened. And I think in Heavy Rain, is that the one where the little boy dies?
We're trying to find the boy kind of thing. And
press next to Jason or whatever.
Yes.
And then there's like another boy that he's made dinner for, and you're just sitting there at the dinner table with the boy and he's eating. And again, you can like press anything to move on to the next scene, but you also have this option to just sit with it, which, is something that I guess we need to do more in life, is just sit with it. But that might be some of the most fertile ground for people talking about, their interpretations of the game when they come to the game club. What were you thinking in that quiet moment?
That sounds like a great question.
Entirely. And you can create those reflective moments even about games or narratives that are busy in nature. You can read an action-packed book or play an extremely heavy-duty action-based game, and afterwards you are still there, so you have space. So you can create those spaces of like getting someone to reflect on their experience of doing a thing is where you add yourself to it.
Yeah.
I think we want to be careful of not choosing not having games every month that are intense, narrative driven, really deep
This is meant to be a
subjects.
fun hobby.
Yeah.
We're also built around this club that is full of people that are helping, that they're your friends and the larger community, and everyone's going to be playing that same game for that month. Feels like a good opportunity, at least for 1 month, to be like, this month's game is a multiplayer game. You know what's funny is you get better and more interesting conversations usually if maybe the game was a genre that you don't usually play. If you get a bunch of people
or you don't like.
Yeah, or you don't like.
Have you ever tried to sit down and articulate to someone why you don't like something? You get a complex understanding of it, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And you have this better conversation, especially if they love it. And you're like, this is the reason why I don't. And they're like, no, well, I love it because of these reasons. And you can have this dialogue because disagreeing is part of being in a relationship with someone. And again, I've said this quite a few times recently, but calling each other on names online for the last decade has not really improved the way that people disagree. So sitting down with someone and just saying, I really like first-person shooters. They're not for me. Here's why. And then say, well, here's why I enjoy it. You get to learn about the experience of someone else through that dialogue and through that conversation.
And you get to learn about that person as well, like the other person.
Exactly.
You get to know more about them,
True.
which is the whole point.
We're less likely to be rude when we're face to face, and we'll disagree better. And I guess not everyone's going to engage with the book club on the super academic side of what Tracy Fullerson's talking about, where you get into some super gnarly stuff. But it's also kind of important to be able to, because there will be, not every game, but there'll be the occasional game that makes points that you were talking about, Guy. Like, what does this say? There was a little bit of, of a point about racism in this game or whatever. And you need to have like a space where you can talk about that, where, I wouldn't kind of trust Twitter to be that space.
No, that's this is that idea is like, it starts kind of with a question as opposed to an answer, which is, where do you have big conversations and who do you talk to when things are important to you right now?
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you have enough people, then we're trying to create somewhere that's kind, that you can find your friends to do that.
That's actually a big reason why this is very much actually driven from Shay's background and knowledge here, building up the terminology with the game club where it's a neighborhood, trying to actually create and give an impression of a familiar space that kind of conveys the conversations and the attitudes and the ways that we want people to behave. Because you've kind of almost got to train people out of the social media environments that they've been in for the last couple of decades, which really has become just not really great ways to connect, and trying to actually, from the ground up, build something that has a real language with intent to actually encourage and drive people to communicate and connect in a particular way.
Well, a shared language is one of the things that creates a community. Having a shared language with your friends, having a shared language with the people who are into the same thing as you is one of the things that creates community. So being intentional about that language allows us to foster some community to start with. And on top of that, when we were talking about games you don't like, when I said try to articulate, the reason being is because you're only capable of kind of expressing the things you have words for and language for. And so if we start to build a lexicon within our own community about how we're going to be as a community, then you're one step closer to the kind of group based on kindness that we're going for.
That's such a good point. And I read recently James Paul G's book about what video games have to teach us about learning and literacy. And he talks about having a language of a semiotic domain, and a language that belongs to that domain. And when you adopt it and you can converse with other people in that domain, you have that identity. And it's only kind of just occurring to me that, I live in games, but I guess when you said, Guy, that, if you feel like you're not having enough conversations about this, like, this is my field, and I probably don't have as many of those conversations as I would like. And oddly enough, I joined, my partner got me a membership to a book club a little while ago. So I've been doing more of this in the game space more of this in the book space than the game space, even though games is my field. And like, to your point, Shay, like, they, as part of the book club, they had us read Faulkner, and I discovered I fucking hate Faulkner, but I articulated why, and I enjoyed the experience of doing it.
I notably run a very large book club already, and getting 170 locations, a couple of thousand men to read Faulkner was one of my favorite things, and to this day I still have people complain that we read that book. But the thing that's amazing is now there's thousands of men out there who can tell you why they dislike Faulkner.
Yeah,
probably one of the great masters of 20th century American fiction. They can now articulate that they just don't like Faulkner, and they can say that at a barbecue on Sunday.
Yes. Look, I'm glad that I engaged with it. It wasn't that long a book. Like it was As I Lay Dying.
So As I Lay Dying. It wasn't. That's a difficult.
It wasn't one
book.
of the longer ones.
That's a difficult.
Yeah, I hated it, but I would like to engage in more of that in the field that I live and work in as well. It's crazy, isn't it?
I think this is a bit wild though, man, because Jeremy, you and I are very much in the game space and have been, and I think we're surrounded by developers and publishers and other journalists and things like this. So we can tend to actually, a lot of the times we will talk about the business of games or the deep dive process of the design or development of games. And I have to actually take that hat off a little bit with the game club and recognize that we're trying to create something this isn't something for the games industry. It is something for just people that play games.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. I talk more about the games that I play with the people down at the local karaoke bar that I go to all the time.
Yeah.
And they're not in the games. They don't even know what I do for a living. It doesn't matter. I talk to them about games more than I do people in the games industry that are my colleagues.
It's like kind of a missed opportunity, isn't it? Because, like I feel like we're in this, like the modern world is like full of paradoxes where like video games simultaneously address loneliness while causing it. We have infinite information, but people are dumber. Infinite connection makes us lonelier. But like, I feel like games do, like they do give us something that maybe like, social media and stuff doesn't, where, one thing I've heard and maybe you've heard this as well is that, people talk about the nature of friendships. I've heard that women tend to engage in friendships more face to face, where like talking is the main activity, whereas men tend to engage more shoulder to shoulder, where we're working on a project, we're fixing the lawnmower, we're checking the price of a car, and I've found that to be true. And maybe what that says is not great. Like maybe what that says is, male friendship is only acceptable when it's productive for the community or something like that. And that's a whole other discussion, but it kind of is what it is. And
it's a big discussion. Well, firstly, gender is not a binary and all of these things are socialized, but that is stuff that you see a lot in sort of traditional male relationships, is sitting side by side, watching something, doing something. We had comfortable conversations in a car. Is a classic, Why does that come about? It probably comes about, and this is something I talk about quite a lot, which is, based upon the work of Robert Putnam, the disappearing civic layer of community, the amount of civic organizations that men were involved in 50, 60 years ago, a union, a church, a political party, a football club, the Masons, the Lions Club, the Buffalo Club, the local Grand Poobahs Association, like they were in stuff. You think back to the Flintstones, and they're in the Grand Poobah Club, right? That's their fraternal organization. Now there's inherent problems with a lot of those things that I just mentioned, but the thing that is there is that men in spaces together working on something, and in those cases, a lot of those things they're working on is the community. They're working on the community that they're doing. There is a mechanism in which they do together to create those conversations. So remaking spaces where people can talk about the things that they have shared experiences, because fixing the lawnmower together is a shared experience. They now have a shared language. They now are a group of the two people who made that together. You can do that with games. We can do that with, we both played this game. Let's make an organization. Let's make a little club of 10 people, a little clubhouse of 10 people in the game club where we were the people who did the thing.
the term community, especially in the gaming world, is kind of overused and abused in so many ways. Like, whether it be on Discord or whether it be a guild or whatnot. Like, I think the purpose and reason for and what we like to think of when we think about community is not really represented as much when it comes to these communities around games. A community should be somewhere where if you're part of it, people recognize you, and if you leave it, people notice that you leave.
Yeah,
Right.
And if you think back to the kind of 50, 60 year ago example I'm talking about, because if we're going through the sort of friendship recession, it means that we weren't previously. And that's the thing to notice, is that we weren't previously. Was your grandfather better at making friends than you? Probably not. But he had more opportunities. And one of those is, let's talk about a football club. The football club that he went to every single Sunday had 500 members. And when he didn't turn up on Sunday, people went and checked. People noticed he was gone. My local football club down the road here has 150,000 members, and they don't notice if I'm not there unless I don't pay them. The only time they check is if I just don't pay them. I get an email. It's not even by someone. And so knowing that you're part of a community and having other people know that you're part of that community as well is, again, part of that structure, that dense lattice work of community. And I mean community in the way that we mean it, and not just in I'm in the chat group. Like, an actual community is about that interconnectedness, and being there and not being there, I think, is going to be important to the clubhouses that we build if we do it right.
Yeah. Those are such great points. It's, it's something I've thought about with regards to, like, in institutions and churches and things like that. It's like this quote from G.K. Chesterton, who said that, like, if he's got a thing called Chesterton's fence, where you come across a fence in a piece of land that you just bought and you don't know why it's there. And the principle says you don't remove it until you find the reason. And a lot of these traditions that we have are kind of like solutions to problems that we've forgotten.
Entirely. And this one is intentional in that example, because when we talk about 4.2 civic organizations is the amount that you're in Australia as a middle-aged man I would be in if it was 50 years ago, and currently statistically it is 0, which means that we've radically changed how people interact with their community and how their community interacts with them, but not replaced it with anything. Blindly knocking down fences and going, why are all the animals running around? Why is there so much chaos? So we took all the things away. So we have to reconstruct them or find another solution. And we're going for a reconstruct idea. With all the parts of the game club, you could put it together in a different way and turn it into something very different. But what we're attempting here to do is we're going to measure ourselves by how many people come out of this happier and with more friends. And that's the intentionality about it, is how even from day one, the language that we've worked on together and the ideas around this is, how can you make a place that is kind in a time of radical cruelty and performative unkindness? How could you intentionally make a space that's that is about making community by hand again, getting people together, talking about things they love, shared joy?
Yeah, it's like we need to be intentional about fixing this society-wide problem that we've identified about being a member of institutions. And when we talked about Louise Rosenblatt, who was advancing reader response theory, one of the main arguments that she made was that when you engage in this kind of activity, which I think applies to either literature or games, you create better citizens as well.
Because if you're interconnected, you're then interconnected. Like when you see how your relationships and your actions affect the people around you in a community, you're more likely to be aware of that, and you're more likely to do something about it. And one of the other things about this is not community building at someone, it's organizing community with them. And so this is based upon an old paper from the 90s called Services Are Bad for People, which is that enabling people to create clubhouses where they live so they can build their friendships is not something that we can do for them. Well, the enabling them is, but the building friendships is going to be down to them. We're just going to give them the tools. We don't make the house. We just bring the tools.
Do you think that game club chapters need to have an upper limit on memberships just because as soon as things get, okay, yep, cool. There you go.
I just
Already thought about
it. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it's a 10.
Okay, yeah.
We're looking at
You're
that.
on top of it.
We're looking at that 10 number for a number of reasons. We're talking about the amount of relationships you can maintain. Also, there's some good research in how you're able to, how many people can be in one conversation and participate in one conversation.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if you have been going to your clubhouse of the game club for 5 years and everyone at that table is a great friend of yours now, not in every single way, not in identical ways, but great friends of yours, then you've got that 10 amount of friends that we were talking about as the healthy ideal before.
Yeah.
So if we do it right, that's the goal.
There's another aspect of this as well where we want people to actually build friendships that grow beyond just the game club clubhouse meetups, where people within these clubs, these successful clubhouses, are like, I would like to meet more people or other people, and then they decide to go and host another one of another clubhouse. Like it becomes almost a pay it forward kind of way for people to actually continue to actually grow their clubhouses and grow their friendships.
For all the community organizing nerds in the audience, it's Marshall Gans based snowflake theory. That's
Love it.
The idea.
The AI companion space is something that I think is going to have a lot of overlap with this idea of NPCs in games. People already sort of form emotional bonds with some NPCs in games, and when you hook it up to an LLM and it becomes like a digital Tamagotchi, there is the potential for people to devote some of their, I guess, I'm going to use the very academic term of friendship energy or something like that. To
the friendship juice. Yeah.
Yeah, the juice. Yeah. And we're already starting to see like LLM companies marketing towards loneliness. Guy, you're in New York, and I saw there was a big ad campaign for this. I think it was called Friend AI. I don't know if you saw this, but they had like banners plastered all across the city, specifically targeting loneliness and saying, if you need a friend, just talk to our Friend AI.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that it's kind of dangerous on the technical side, but I guess I was just curious on the loneliness side. Like,
we see the game club as the antithesis of AI and these chatbots and things like this. If the problem is loneliness, the answer is helping people connect with other people.
I think that defining characteristics of whether it is going to be helpful or not is whether it attempts to address the symptoms or the cause. Like it could potentially be a really helpful thing in combating loneliness, as long as it's solution focused, as opposed to keep you on the app for the next 12 years focused.
Yeah.
I see. Right. Yeah. Optimizing for engagement, which, a lot of SaaS is just all about
economy
that
stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Take a step back and go, what's the intent of the company that's making it? What's their goal?
Well, yeah, I mean, even when it's well-intentioned, like even if it was like a not-for-profit or something like that, like there's all sorts of, and we chatted about this with Chris Simon, the technical side of it is fraught with danger, especially the sycophancy problem where, no matter what you suggest, it's going to tell you it's a great idea, even if you happen to be suggesting things that are harmful to yourself or others.
Firstly, I just want to think about every great change in my life has come from someone in my life telling me not to do a thing or that I'm wrong. So a machine that agrees with me, I would
bad idea. Yeah.
That would be an awful, way worse. If you're lonely in New York, you're not short on people. The resources are already there, right?
Yeah.
So how you get them together is solving the problem, not just the symptoms.
But also how you get them to actually listen to each other as well.
There's however many million people, but a certain amount of those will be at their cognitive limit for friends.
Sure.
Sometimes, you try to meet up with a friend, it's not working out, you're both busy or whatever. It's helpful to know that some people just have a cognitive limit. It helps you to not take it personally, especially if you're a person who's moved city recently. Like, I've got a family member who's He's not really in the gaming space. He's older, but he just commented on like, how do you make friends here? When like, what do you do? Like,
I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot.
There's actually been a bunch of folks that have emailed us since we launched the Game Club. They've said, love this idea, think it's great. I don't feel like I'm needing to increase my friend group right now. Like this is not needed for, I don't feel I need this right now. To which the answer is fine, totally fine. That's good. Because you wouldn't want to get in that situation where other people are in the group and they're looking to make friends, and you're like, oh, I'm actually tapped. I'm busy. It's like,
but busy is an interesting conversation as well, because, again, going back to GANs, people always have time for what's important, and because that's how you choose to spend it is how you rate, is you categorize importance, right? So. People always have time for what's important, and if having more friends in your life is important, you'll find the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think the next business venture that we see from you two will be a reverse LLM that tells you your ideas are shit.
I told you to go outside and wander around and meet people at the dog park,
Yeah. I want an AI chatbot that actually just tells you, stop talking to me. What are you doing?
You paid for this?
Make better choices. Get off this app.
It'll have integrations with other SaaS products that, like, connect it to your Gmail, and it'll send you Gmails like, touch grass.
It's so funny, man. We're at the start of the Game Club. Like, we literally only just launched the first game 2 weeks ago. We're going to learn so much in the next couple of months about what works or how to tweak things or whatnot. Just encouraging people that if it's of interest to them, just join, sign up now. You don't get charged until next month when you get your copy of the game. So we're very intentional on that. But if people join up now, they don't get the copy of the game, they should still come along to the clubhouses to meet people.
And we're going to build it together. This is something that we're doing with people, not for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sold on the idea. Sometimes serendipitous things happen in life where, once upon a time when the Age of Conan MMO came out was when I decided to start reading Robert E. Howard. Recently I went to Paris and I was reading a book about the existentialist philosophers in Paris while being in Paris. And I feel like another one of those just happened recently where I read the well-read game right as you were launching the Game Club.
Jeremy, I wish I knew that book was in the pre-readings for this lecture, because I really we're going to share reading lists.
Oh yeah, I can already feel the two of you are going to share articles and reading lists. This is great,
because that book sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone thinking about doing the Game Club, I think especially the first 3 chapters are just so valuable. And so, I'm on board. I'm going to call some people locally and try and get some stuff sorted. I've joined up the creator program. So, if you're listening to this or watching this and you are interested in the Game Club, if you enter the code grokludo, you'll get 50% off the first 3 months. And good luck to you. The first game looks really interesting. But yeah, thanks guys so much. I really appreciate you making the time. Big fan of what you're doing. Cheers.
That's great. Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Cheers, man.